Welcome back to the MMA Plug, presented to you by the Fan Cave on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio. I'm your host, Jordan Kurtz. Give me a follow along online at Comments from the Peanut Gallery. We got Danny Bailey behind the glass. We are joined in studio today by Colorado Combat Club lightweight champion Miguel Barrientos. Right now, we're going to get into a rundown of a couple of the fight cards going on over the weekend. You have UFC back in Vegas this time. They have a main event showcase in the lightweight division going on between what many people are calling the U.S. Khabib in Grant Dawson taking on Bobby Green. Now, this is a really interesting matchup and a styles clash that I'm here for. When you take a look at Grant Dawson taking on Bobby Green, Grant Dawson obviously has had his last couple of camps down there at ATT, formerly of Glory out in Kansas City. And then Bobby Green is just, I mean, that's a California staple right there. Bobby Green is, he's a guy who has an underrated grappling background. Bobby Green can wrestle. Like, Bobby Green started off as a wrestler, but Grant Dawson is a wrestler. So, Miguel, that's where, you know, in terms of the stylistic clash, Bobby's going to want to try to bang it out a little bit.
Yeah. You can't out-wrestle a wrestler.
No.
And, you know, Bobby comes out just to, he's an entertainer, man. I love watching that dude fight. You know, he can go to the ground with that dude.
No, it's not something that I think he wants to play with fire on at all, because when you start talking just squeeze, too, like, there's certain guys, and Miguel, you could speak to this through all of your years of training and especially with grappling, there's a lot of strong guys. But then there's some guys who, when they squeeze you, it feels like everything's about to pop. Like your eyes are going to bust out of your head. You're about to start just squeezing out of it every way possible, right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the type of strength and the squeeze threshold that somebody like a Grant Dawson has. And if Grant Dawson can get on your back, that's a backpack. Like, you're wearing him for pretty much as long as he wants to be there. Grant Dawson is also a guy who has shown that he has that dog in him. What do I mean by that, guys? Well, a couple of fights back, he was losing 12 and a half minutes of that fight, somewhere around in that range. It was against a foreign guy, and the name is escaping me right as we're talking here live, but he was losing he lost 2 of the 3 rounds on the cards and was losing that portion of the 3rd round. And this was still when he was with Krause, and Krause just basically told him, like, hey, man, like, you got to make the decision. Like, you got to decide. And then that's when he pretty much just had the rally cry and finds a way to finish the fight and ends up getting the win. That was the elbows. But I don't know if you can afford to really get that far behind on a guy like a Bobby Green, because if you start getting behind and you get frustrated with Bobby Green, Bobby is such a volume and a rhythm fighter that a lot of what Bobby does is he gets you frustrated, right?
Right. Yeah, and he has cardio for days as well.
He has cardio for days, and especially on the feet. If you can't find your entries, he's gonna do things that are a little bit unorthodox as compared to a lot of other strikers. Bobby starts with his hands low. He shoots from the hip, but part of why he's able to fight with his hands so low is because he's so effective and so efficient in knowing his distance management, right?
Yeah.
He understands when he's in trouble, when he's not. We saw him get knocked out by Drew Dober when his back was all the way up against the fence. Hey, miscalculated the distance there. But in most cases, Bobby is quick enough, and especially the way that he pops his jab, when he takes that step with the lead foot, he pretty much blades himself all the way across. And he has a quick return. So he's out and he's right back in, and he leaves you almost no space to be able to touch him in the process.
And him having his hands down, he's able to defend that takedown much, much easier.
That's a phenomenal point right there, too, is with his hands already low, he can stuff that so much easier, or, you know, shuck him to the side, do whatever he can to possibly keep his back from hitting the cage, and even more importantly, keep his back from hitting the canvas.
Right.
Because if it goes there, it's going to be a tough fight. I think that this is a pick'em in my eyes. I can't really lean one direction or the other, but I do think that it is certainly a fight that you have to keep your eyes on, because, you know, the stylistic matchup, that's exactly what it is. We go out there, we have these styles clashes because we want to see who's the real dude. Who is that guy? In the co-main event, we're going to have a couple of cats who are definitely no shortage of the power equation. You have Joe Pyfer taking on Abdul Razak Al Hassan. Now, Abdul has done a ton of training out here in Denver throughout his career. You also have Joe Pyfer coming out of the Philly area, who he calls himself Philly Tough. And I mean, knowing the circumstances of Joe Pyfer's background and coming up, when he came right off the Contender Series, he was essentially homeless and was about to be living out of a car situation, and he changed his life. Like, fighting changed his life. He had a little bit of a blessing from Uncle Dana. Then he's gone out in his UFC career and he's put on quality performances, won a couple of bonuses, went out there in one of the big pro grappling shows, and he submitted, or I don't think he submitted, but he beat Gerald Meerschaert. So, but I mean, he's just going out there and he's actively competing across multiple disciplines, and he's changing his life because he's willing to be that gamer. Abdul Razak Al Hassan, that is a guy who has thunderous power. The guy who was in the feature fight that he went up against in Joaquin Buckley, I thought that he won that fight, and we'll talk a little bit about Buckley in a minute. But that just goes to show you, though, that this guy has some serious chops in the striking game, and the way that he can kick, it is like a baseball bat when that thing connects. So that's a fight that you certainly want to keep your eyes on in that co-main event. I feel like this card is going a little bit under the radar and hasn't gotten some of the mass attention as maybe some other fight night cards. And maybe that's just because we're on the heels of being off for a week, or a lot of the talk is being steered toward UFC 294 at the end of the month. Don't know really what it is, but there just hasn't been a whole ton of talk going into some of these matchups, and some of these are more of the prospect versus contender level guys outside of that main event. So I understand in terms of where the attention gets garnered, but still, for me as a fight fan, I love these type of cards because that gives you the opportunity to see someone that you can attach yourself to for later cards or later opportunities. Maybe you're seeing on this card somebody like just for example, you see the Montana De La Rosa and JJ Aldrich fight. JJ trains out of here in Denver. Montana used to do some training out of here in Denver, but they put on an exciting performance, and they're like, oh, wow, the next time that you see a card, well, she goes out there and she scraps. Like, I want to make sure that I watch her fight. These are what these type of cards give you that opportunity for, so that when those moments come, you know a little bit about something, and it's not just riding off of those A-list stars. Everybody knows who Sean is. The Seans, I should say. Strickland and O'Malley. We have two champions who are Seans now at this point. Everybody's going to know who the big dogs are. But I think that it's important to watch the prelims, to watch these fight night cards, so you just get a better overall understanding of who everybody is. You learn styles. You learn a little bit more about camps. And you just become a student of the game. But that's me. You have the feature fight of the night. It's a welterweight showcase between Alex Morono and Joaquin Buckley. Now, this is a fight that I feel is it's going to be interesting to see, because Alex Morono is a very seasoned veteran who I think is underrated, or I think he's undervalued in terms of his overall skill set. He's got pop in his hands. He can grapple, but he just doesn't really get a lot of that mass attention, if you will. I mean, especially like you go out there and you see the fight that he had against Cowboy, and granted, that's Cowboy at the end of the run, but you can't tell me that that guy doesn't have some sauce. And then on the flip side, we all know that Joaquin Buckley has some ability, because Joaquin Buckley has told us all that he has some ability. Nothing against him as a fighter, but I have never been around a louder person at a fight card than Joaquin Buckley. I was at UFC 273 down in Jacksonville a little over a year ago. Joaquin Buckley was right behind me. For the 6 hours of the fight card, Joaquin Buckley did not stop talking. He talked the entire time. And he did not have an inside voice, ladies and gentlemen. Joaquin Buckley had his little camera there, and he was talking with Charles Johnson, and I love Charles. Super cool Charles. But yeah, Joaquin was just... This was also that same weekend, guys, if you remember, when he had the altercation with Hamzat. Yeah, so this is all that same time. Joaquin is just... He's a very boisterous personality, but the kid does have some ability. I think that it is the right move for him career-wise that he's gone down to welterweight, because he was fighting at middleweight, and he's a tweener, which it's a tough position for him to be, but he's way too small to be a middleweight at the highest of levels. It just comes down to that. He's not a tall guy by any means. He's just thick. He's a very muscled up dude who has a high level of fast twitch muscle fibers that are built for being able to knock you out. And that's exactly what he does best. You have a few other fighters who have cut their teeth in the Colorado scene or still call Colorado home. Drew Dober of Elevation Fight Team takes on Ricky Glenn. You have Alex the Great Ape Hernandez out of Factory X taking on Bill Algeo. As we mentioned, we have JJ Aldrich taking on Montana De La Rosa. And then we have little monster Vanessa Demopoulos, who did spend a camp. She's out in Vegas now, but had spent some time out here in Colorado. So just giving a little bit of a shout to all of them there.
Thank you so much for watching. Please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. That helps us continue to produce this original MMA content and bring it for you every single week. Tune in to the MMA Plug presented by
Fan Cave
on 98.1 FM, Mile High Sports Radio.